So I'm delighted to welcome Matt Javanshir from Propulsion Games, who is our first guest on this podcast, this new format that we're launching. Matt, so good to have you.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's great to be chatting.
Bex has told me quite a bit about Propulsion Games, about a little bit about your journey. Super fascinating. So I'd love to kind of start way back, if we can, back at the maybe at the beginning of your journey with Propulsion Games. But also, firstly, though, tell us a little bit about yourself. Who are you? What makes you what makes you tick?
Well, okay, where to start? I would describe myself kind of a walking identity crisis a little bit. So I I studied accounting at university. Left university, went straight into work in the finance sector at an investment bank, and I did kind of the sort of very corporate risk and controls related roles for years. Qualified as a charter certified accountant, moved into internal audit, and then I got into data back when, like, big data, data science, data analytics, these things were sort of emerging as terms in companies. So I moved into that role several years ago and just loved it, just sort of fell in love with all things geeky and data and stuff. And then parallel to that whole life of suits and ties and banks, I was moonlighting as a indie video game composer and sound designer. So I've also been doing that for about 12 years or so, kind of balancing those two things. So, working quite long hours sometimes at a bank, getting on the tube, getting on a long train, getting home, stuffing dinner down, and then trying to like make music and express my artistic side and all that sort of stuff. And then around 10 years ago, my brother got into developing games. And we started doing it together as a hobby. So we started off doing game jams together. Things that, like, you get given a brief on a Friday and you have to try and turn around a game on the Sunday night. And we sort of got into that. My wife is a graphic designer, so she sort of helped us as well with various bits and bobs with the games. And just as the years went on, we kind of got more and more ambitious with what we were doing. So trying to make bigger games, trying to see, wouldn't it be great if we could put a game onto Steam? And then we did that, and then just experimenting with different things, like getting better and better. So I don't know if this is the typical journey of someone doing a startup. I sort of came into this thinking, when people have an idea for a business, they kind of get that bolt of lightning and they're like, I'm going to make this business. It's going to be this thing, and I'm going to like go off and I'm going to get my funding and financing, blah, blah. That wasn't the case with us. We just started having fun, and we were like, this is coalescing into something that is bridging the gap between an impressive hobby and maybe something that could be more than a hobby. And sort of like, that's kind of where we've been floating for a long time, like that kind of level. And at some point over the last couple of years, I just made the decision to like take myself more away from the finance stuff and pour myself into Propulsion Games a little bit more. So it's been a bit of a journey, but at the start of the year, I left my job, which I had mixed emotions about, because I didn't dislike it. I'd been doing it my whole adult life for 15 years. And I was like, you know what, life's too short. I owe it to myself to just jump in and see if I can do a bit more with Propulsion Games. Not really any massive expectations of mine, but just seeing, like, if I had more time, what could we do? And really, thanks to my understanding wife, to be honest with you, like we've kind of made this jump. So it's a bit of a shift in terms of, like, finances and that sort of thing. But I've been able to like enjoy myself creatively and do things outside of work, like do more school runs and look after my daughters during the week and that sort of thing. So I'm sort of been balancing creative side, family side, and just seeing where it takes us this year.
Wow. Amazing. What an answer. Goodness me. I knew that, as Bex had said, that this was going to be an interesting conversation. I've probably got 50 other questions that you
all right
a little bit. But let me just start with something. I think you mentioned there, I don't know if this is a typical journey. I think what we're finding out with all the conversations that we're having with people all the time is that there is no typical journey. And actually what you've done is, we hear a lot. We hear, that kind of similar path of doing that kind of side gig, if you like, or that side hustle. And slowly it becomes more than a hobby. And then slowly you get to the point where maybe you can change the way that you're living and working to kind of, for that to be the main thing. And that's such a cool cool journey that you've been on. So fascinating that taking that very big leap from doing something stable that is, earns really well, I'm sure, in the kind of finance world around data and all that kind of thing, and then took that leap from a creative perspective. You can see the piano in the background as well, of course, the kind of composition side of things as well. I've got a little bit of I'm not a composer, but like to play music every now and again.
Oh, awesome.
And I always struggled with that kind of technical thing on one side, and I'm driven by data. I love building stuff, coding and whatever else, but also there's that kind of creative aspect. And it seems like that's a bit of what you've been doing, is kind of marrying or balancing creative with analytical worlds. And a lot of people think that that's that there are different types of people that do those two different things, right? But actually you're testament to the fact that you can do both. And feels like, and I might be wrong here, I might be jumping to a conclusion, but it feels like you've now established a way that you can maybe do a bit of both of those things with what you're kind of creating with the game.
What you've touched on has been one of the biggest lessons I've learned this year, and thanks to my discussions with Rebecca, or Bex, I don't know what you want to go by. It's that, like, when we started our conversations earlier this year, I was kind of very much like, I have left the finance world and now I'm reinventing myself as this creative person. So now I need to like fit into this creative archetype. And it was only through our conversations that I sort of came to realize, no, like, if what you're trying to do is find a niche for yourself and grow that niche, your niche can be that you're a bit of a geeky data logic guy and you can merge that with creative expression in some way. So that's one of the things we did with Propulsion games. Our games have always been somewhat like logic puzzle based, but we decided to take it a step further this year, and we released a range of literary logic puzzles that are literally like, here is a piece of paper with that looks like something diegetic. It could look like a menu or a telegram or a 90s style TV guide, but actually it's a logic puzzle, and you have to use things that in a different context you'd probably find in a workplace, in like workplace training. So like, I have to understand how this, you'd say things like how this data combines, or how I can shift this to look like this. And it's something that's quite on the surface, quite dry and boring, but we've tried to merge it to make it fun. And so, yeah, like, we don't make games that have guns and you shoot and that's, well, like, some of our games have lasers and stuff, but like, we've mainly focused on what makes us. And for us, that was, okay, like, let's just not shy away from the fact that we're geeky people and we enjoy logic and codes and things like that. Let's find a way to make that our thing. So that's kind of what the journey we've been on this year. Yeah.
And really leaning into that uniqueness that you have, because you're kind of blending. And I often think about this idea of, like, the rise of the generalist, where you can take little bits of expertise and skills and kind of merge them together into something which makes you unique. I'm interested to bring in Bex, if I can. And this is a bit of a strange kind of format, but Bex is both going to maybe ask some questions from an interviewing perspective, but also talk through and enrich that story a bit for Matt as well. How did you kind of make Matt realize that? What kind of approaches did you take with your coaching that kind of got? Cause it feels like, and I might be wrong here, but it feels like that's an enormous journey that's happened over quite a short space of time, and it's really opened up the world for Matt and what the future could hold. So I'm interested to hear how you did that.
Yeah, I was whereas Matt looks out the window for an oak tree, I look up at my noteboard. Do you know what? It was lean startup principles. So when we first met through the Creative UK programme, there was the back catalogue of Propulsion games. There was a view of what they wanted to achieve and a bit of a plan. And we worked out that actually it was looking like just going into sort of serious games. That was the overarching name. We kind of then, from that point, we could understand who the customers might be, what that interest might be. And there were different prongs as such to the plan. So there was a look to see whether we could do some kind of like geeky escape room type thing for stag do's potentially, an alternative of that, or whether it's a case of going in and training people on data. And Matt used to write little puzzles and games and send them out to colleagues, and we knew there's that playful side of it, and what could we do with that. And I think it was interesting, the fact that both you went away and spoke to people, but also looked at what really interested him, I can't say that there was like a specific formulaic approach, but essentially it was like, right, okay, well, this is a hunch. Let's go and experiment. Let's go and get some more information, some insights, work out from that. And it kind of nicely progressed because realistically, there were external constraints on what could be achieved. So his brother's having a baby. Matt wanted to see what he could do single-handedly. We went out and trialed and tested things. And actually, he came back to me after a couple of weeks away and said, "Like, I've completely pivoted. This is what we're going to do. We're going to go from a puzzle basis thing. I've got control of that whilst other members of the team aren't as available as I am. So let's see if we can just test the market, see if there's something in it in the short term." So that's where these amazing Brainy Hawk,
yeah.
Brainy Hawk, sorry. Brainy Hawk puzzles came into play, and they're awesome. Like, I love it. It's interesting you say that in terms of this maths and music thing. There is a huge link. My maths teacher was also my music teacher, and in terms of rhythms and patterns, actually, they often quite nicely dovetail. I love a puzzle. So, even just simple things like the way Matt was testing them. He was collaring people on his street and speaking to them. I was getting them. He was trial testing them with his friends to see what worked, whether the intros landed, whether they made sense, whether they were hard. It was almost that Goldilocks thing of, were they difficult enough or too difficult? What level was he setting them at? And then there was that go-to-market strategy plan of, what does that look like? How do we potentially sell these? And that iterated through. You knew the price point that was generally kind of acceptable in the market. We had some conversations with people about different ways to potentially fund and back them. So was it going to be a short run of them? Could we do a Kickstarter? Conversations about Kickstarter led to needing a wider audience. So that led him to going on Reddit. So there's always been this beautiful approach of just, this is an assumption. He's gone off and tried and tested him. He's incredibly resourceful, I think is the best word, because they'll just go off and whenever we speak, I come back and he always astounds me what he's done, what the next thing, because it was not something I would have predicted. But it's like, and these are the insights we've got, right, what's next? And we kind of talk it through, and then he goes off and just smashes it. And even things like going back and speaking to his old boss, because at one point I was like, well, why wouldn't the bank that you work in be potentially one of your first customers if you are going to that serious play approach and training people? If you were the one of the go-to people for these kind of things and people liked your style and engaged with it, why would you not? And it's just like, oh, that was an interesting conversation, wasn't it?
Yeah, it really was. And they love the Brainy Hawks as well, just as much, maybe even more than the first things we were chatting about. Exactly. But another thing you're reminding me of is creative constraints. So another reason that we ended up going in this direction is because none of us on the team are artists, so we sort of rely on third-party asset store things, and in an art-led medium, that's quite difficult in video games. So another reason why we've ended up at the logic-based stuff is because that's our skill set, and so you can almost like naturally find your niche by simply drawing out your skills as a Venn diagram and then just looking what's in the middle of that Venn diagram. That is my niche, because I can't be anything else.
But even the stuff that you've spun up for the Halloween game, like the constraints that you've put yourself. I mean, we had a phone call a couple of weeks ago and he's like, we're doing this, and I was like, holy shit.
So my brother, we were at the gym and my brother was like, don't be mad, and I was like, okay, what's he gonna say? And he was like, I've taken our Brainy Hawk idea, and it's inspired me. I want to do something that's half that and half video game. So sort of like, let's go halfway between what the games we used to make, the place you're at now, and I want to do one final project, and I want to do it in 2 months. He has a baby due any moment now. I've got my phone by my monitor for when my sister-in-law's in labour. And he was like, I can do it, trust me. So we've done a really, really compressed hour-long horror game. And you're walking around a haunted house, but parallel to that is a load of PDFs on a Google Drive somewhere. And the idea of the game is that a group of you sit around the table, the screen at one end of the table, and someone's controlling walk around the house. And they have to try and find things in the house to exorcise a demon, but you don't know what those things are because you have to solve logic puzzles from reading through these case notes that are on the Google Drive. So it could be an obituary of someone, it could be some sort of government report, and you have to read through, solve clues, solve riddles, and then it'll be, aha, it's this type of item. Can we find that in the house? And then you find that. So it's kind of like fostering teamwork and communication and puzzle solving, all the stuff we love, but it's like half Brainy Hawk, half video game. And it just wouldn't have existed had we have not gone on this journey. And it's like probably like the coolest thing we've worked on. I mean, I don't know how financially successful it will be because we're kind of doing all the wrong things in terms of announcing and releasing within a few weeks. But in terms of like a proof of concept, prototype vertical slice of an idea, I think is awesome. And it's been really fun to work on.
But I think there's that beautiful intersection because one of your big things, well, there's a couple of things in terms of the nostalgia of video games and how we used to play together. So it used to be a case of like someone had a Mega Drive and you'd all pile around their house and you would play as a team and there would be in that involvement. But also, you know, the things that you love and the things that inspire you, but you've also found a marketplace for them and there's other people who love those things, and all the games often have like a tinge of nostalgia. I mean, there's beautiful, you've interlaced members of your family into the game. You were saying about your gran, like
Yep.
it comes from like a place of love, which I really adore. And that's the thing, like you can do these amazing creative things which are a piece of you, but they have commercial value to other people. Like people want to pay, you know, they want to spend their Saturday
Yep.
night doing that rather than going to the cinema. So as long as you balance these things out, you can do the things that really excite you and make you happy.
And that's always been really important to us because indie games is kind of exhausting. Like it's very difficult to make. It's quite a saturated market and you're spending a lot of your time just trying to get other people's attention, really, which I think is true of a lot of people starting anything. But sometimes it just feels very true with indie games. You feel like, does anyone apart from us even care about this? And so it's been important to us that we kind of enjoy the process. So everything we've done, we've always put in jokes in it, because it's like my brother and one of my best friends, we're always trying to like make each other laugh, and it's always been like fun, because we know that there's no guarantees at the other end of the outcome, and you can't control the outcome. You can only control the process. So we just make sure that we enjoy the process, and then I think sometimes that shows in what you make at the end. You can sort of tell if something's been fun, or I think so anyway.
Yeah, we completely agree, don't we? In terms of like, if you're going to do hard things, make them fun and energizing, because otherwise it just burns you out.
Yeah. And it reminds me of, we were talking a bit about these kind of intersecting circles of a Venn diagram. You know, Ikigai is a concept that many people are familiar with, this kind of idea of what you love doing, what you're good at, what the world needs, and what you can get money for. And at the center is supposed to be your kind of purpose. And I think it's a really interesting theoretical framework. But I think what you've done is shown us how you can kind of apply that to how you've sort of applied that, whether intentionally or not. You've definitely kind of had an eye on what do we love to do and what are we good at. And actually, we're not good at these things. We don't have these capabilities. So therefore, how can we shift a different lever that gives us that in a different way? Or how can we be resourceful to kind of make up for some of those challenges? And of course, in business, often we'll kind of hire in people that are different to you, that kind of do a different type of work and have a different skill set to kind of balance things out, which is amazing. But also, never forgetting that thing that you really enjoy doing, that you can get lost in your work for hours on end, and I'm sure you do, kind of really getting into the flow of work. And then when you've got people that you love to be around as well, whether that's family or friends or whatever, that just makes the whole process so much more enjoyable, and bringing in those kind of in-jokes. It's one of the reasons, honestly, that Bex and I have started this work, or definitely I've been far more invested and involved in this work, is because I love it and it gives me so much energy, right? Talking about the Growth Playground, I'm like bouncing every time we have a conversation, every time we do work. I'm like energy levels are just massively inflated in comparison to perhaps some of the other work that I might have done over the last couple of years. So I love that kind of exploring and experimenting to find out what that thing is, and it constantly being something that's in shift as well. It's always going to be changing as you change and as your family situation changes and the world changes, you know, all those kind of things. One very quick question about that particular game, right?
Yep.
I've personally got a bit of a challenge. So I've got 4 kids. 2 of them are older. One's just turned 18 and one's 16. I've got 2 other kids who are, and yeah, this is a bit weird. Why am I saying this?
Oh,
2 older ones from an ex-wife, 2 current ones, if you like, from my current wife, which again sounds really weird. I don't mean it like that. Kids ranging from 18 to 9 and 2 adults, and we're all getting together this weekend, and we wanted to do something really fun. We're thinking about kind of escape rooms, but actually my oldest daughter's bringing her boyfriend, so there's 7 of us. Long story short, we're looking for something really cool. How can you get that many people doing something really interesting and fun and whatever together, properly together? And it sounds like actually I need to be jumping into one of your games and having a play and doing that properly fun, puzzle-based, fun stuff together. What would you recommend? What game should I choose?
yeah. Well, you can definitely
Not the
give that a go.
Halloween one, because I
No, I'm
watched the
trying to
trailer
think.
and it
Yeah.
scared the bejesus out of me.
Yeah, the
Is
game
it?
I mentioned is a horror game.
Yeah, it's
It's kind of tough. There's a few group games like that, right? Like games like Keep Talking and Nobody Explodes, which is where you're trying to decipher a bomb, and the rest of the group are reading the instructions of how to do that. You've got like the Jackbox games, which is kind of like these cooperative games, but I don't know how. I'm trying to think how suitable those are for children. I don't know if they're that suitable. It's kind of hard, isn't it, to because puzzle games challenge you, and what challenges you varies depending on your age and experience.
Of course.
So
Yeah.
I guess it is hard to find something that would cater for that full range. Mario Kart, just pick Mario Kart. Like you can't go wrong, right?
I think we'll give something a go, even if it's maybe the younger ones go to bed and we'll do something, maybe the horror one with the older ones after a couple of drinks, with obviously only with my 18-year-old drinking, of course.
But you know what? It was interesting. It showed the power of the music. So
thank you.
When I spoke to Matt and he was like, "Oh, we're doing this game," and I was like, "That's brilliant." I loved. So I know some of the little in-jokes and I know some of the little things that are placed and plotted around the game. And I was genuinely excited and he showed me on screen. I was like, this looks phenomenal. And I'm a total wuss. But at this point, I was like, it's just going to be boss. And I think it's probably going to be a little bit tongue-in-cheek and a little bit funny. And then so he sent me through the trailer, which hadn't gone out at this point, and I said to my husband, I was like, this is what we're doing Halloween. And he's like, oh, interesting. You want to play a horror game on Halloween? Okay, let's see. And literally, even when I was watching the trailer, next thing I was like, oh no, I've made a horrible decision. Because the music was just like, oh, this feels sinister now. So great job on the music.
Oh, thank you. Yeah.
Like it did its job. Yeah, I think it'll be an interesting push for me in terms of like my levels of scaredy catness, because I really want to play it because it's the kind of game that I love, that has lots of different levels you've got to explore through, etc. And the fact there's a time limit as well, I think pushes that competitiveness. But maybe I'll just be in charge of like getting drinks for people and keeping the team on track rather than actually involved. Because it's spooky as hell. Good one. You've done well.
Wicked.
Awesome. Thank you.
I'd love, if I can, just to go back a couple of steps. So where I want us to get to, I'd love to know kind of where Propulsion Games is right now, what you're doing in terms of, you don't have to talk about numbers, but you're now doing this full-time or semi-full-time or pretty much the main thing perhaps. So I'd love to get to that point. But I've got a question that might link us into that, hopefully will link us into that, which is, your decision to leave your kind of corporate job, your suit and tie in finance, data kind of focused job. Of course, that means, and I sometimes talk about air cover entrepreneurs, these people that maybe they're innovators or they're trying to do something new or entrepreneurial, but they've got the kind of the umbrella of the company because let's be honest, we're used to a good paycheck. We're used to a good salary. It's kind of supporting how we want to live. But the decision that you made was huge. And I think that's one of the questions that we're going to get a lot with the Growth Playground. There's a lot of people that are, that are a few months behind that point in your life. They've got this side hustle. Maybe they're making some money. They've got a couple of products maybe that are bringing some cash in. Maybe it's supplementary at the moment. But it's a huge decision to go, right, that thing that is our stability, that thing that is our safety net and whatever else, we're going to turn that off and go full steam into this idea. How does that work, or how did you get through that process and kind of come up to that decision?
Well, yeah, it's quite a big question. I think, well, largely from a place of privilege and luck, in my opinion. Like, I don't think it's a route that everyone can do. I think anyone that is able to start their own thing and have a period of time where they can even try, that is privilege, in my opinion. Not everyone can do that because people have busy lives and circumstances that means they can't try. In my particular case, it kind of all started it was March the 13th, 2020, and we got sent home for 2 weeks to let a mysterious virus blow over, right? And that ended up lasting for months. And just it just changed me, to be honest. Like, the whole pandemic just was like, for me, it was just the catalyst that kind of woke me up to a few things. So I loved my job. I still love what that job was, right? What I was doing in the corporate world. I loved the people I was working with. I loved the content of what I was doing, but almost everything else around it, I didn't love. So I was commuting a couple of hours a day each way, at least. My daughter was just a few months old, and I would get up before she woke up. I'd get home after she'd gone to bed, so I didn't see her during the week. I barely saw my wife because I was doing music in the evenings. And when lockdown happened, that kind of all changed. I got to like see them during the day. I got to have dinner. I got to do bath time and bedtime and things like that. And so like it already something in my head started going that I was like, I don't, that sort of weird push that I was in that London bubble to keep go, more. It kind of just stopped. It kind of just dimmed out. And I still enjoyed what I was doing, but I was like, oh, like there could be more to my life than just like focusing entirely on this. And also, we kind of got into the whole sort of simple living minimalism thing, of like decluttering your house, like that kind of thing, right? Like, and we looked around and we were like, wow, we've filled this house with like DVDs, Blu-rays, games, that sort of thing. And I kind of realized that I was sort of doing like, even though on the surface, yeah, you have a good paycheck and stuff, I was spending a lot of money on stuff because I had no time, and I would always make myself feel better with retail therapy, and I stuffed my house. Like, I had shelves and shelves and shelves of games and things like that. So basically, that all stopped because it was lockdown as well, and I just wasn't going out buying anything. I was saving a lot of money on train fare. We were mortgaged up to the eyeballs because that's just what you did, right? You had a good job, you got a bigger house, you keep working, and it kind of all stopped during lockdown. And so we started saving money, and we were like, actually, like, we've gotten rid of so much stuff. We don't need as big a house as we thought. We missed our family, and a bunch of family had passed away from COVID. And I don't want to get like too serious with that sort of thing, but it kind of just, all of these things happened at once, like within like a 4-month period. And it just changed me basically. And I was like, life's too short. I can see a sliver of an option to try something different in my life than I thought the next 30 years were going to go. And we moved back to our hometown. We got a smaller house, a much smaller mortgage, had less stuff. I was spending more time doing more creative stuff because I wasn't commuting. I was seeing my family more. I was happier. And I just one day had a meeting with my boss, and I was like, I don't want this promotion that I've been put up for. I want to do games. And to my astonishment, she was like, okay, leave it with me. And she phoned me back a couple of hours later. She was like, would you like to go part-time? You can just stay in the job like a couple of days a week and work on your music. Like it you know, if that's what you want to do, I'll support you. And like, I couldn't believe it. So that, to me, that's never happened. Like, you don't work in an investment bank and then them offer you part-time work. Like, it just doesn't happen. And I ended up doing that for like 2.5 years because it worked perfectly. I didn't have like the stress of like, oh God, how am I going to pay the mortgage next month? Because I had this part-time work. I did take a step back. Like, I went from leading the team to being in the team, but thankfully the best guy came and like led our team that was previously a colleague, but he's just, I still chat to him to this day, just the best guy in the world. And he became the leader of our team, and he was just as supportive. He was a gamer too, which kind of helped. And so, yeah, I spent 2.5 years really strategizing, going, right, if at some point I'm going to make the leap fully, let's just start like saving our ass off. So we basically saved and saved and saved and saved. And that's when, yeah, we pulled the trigger in December. So it's not like I woke up one morning and like, you know what? I'm tired of this corporate life. I'm going to self-actualize and make games. And like, it didn't happen over the course of a day. Like, it happened over the course of 4 years, like, of making that decision to it actually happening. And so that's basically the story. That's where I'm at now.
I love that
Thank
though.
you.
Yeah.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
it's the
Thank you
best
so much for
way.
sharing.
People just
Sorry.
assume that they have to become an entrepreneur overnight and their business has to support them. And it's not. I know, there's a lady that I follow who was really instrumental when I was starting my business. And she's like, your business is a muse. Don't make it work to pay the rent. Like, just enjoy it, let it flourish. Have some other way of kind of supporting yourself, and whether that be through bootstrapping and
Yep.
freelancing, or keeping your existing job and just trying to make it work behind the scenes, because you put too much pressure on yourself if you go both feet in. I did it with my business. I saved up, like 7 months of mortgage money. I negotiated with my husband as to what I could
Yeah.
stop contributing to. Thank you very much, Simon. And made it work. But also took time off when I was still working to run workshops, to trial the thing I was doing to see if I'd even like it. Like, it's so important to just do that testing rather than go hurtling into something.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love the way you
And,
went
and
about that.
another interesting reflection I've had, which I didn't have at the time, but I sort of have now, is like, again, it's sort of full circling back to what we were saying at the start. I kind of like, when you're working that long and you're not doing the creative stuff you want to do, you do start resenting that world a little bit. And bizarrely, since I've left, I do miss elements of it I didn't think I'd miss. And that's partly why I love the direction we've gone in with Propulsion Games, because I feel like I'm still scratching that itch that made me the geeky data guy. But I'm also like, I used to have jokes with friends. They used to call like me finance Matt and music Matt. They were like, you're two Matts. And like now I feel like it's like Dragon Ball Z style fusion. Like we're now like one Matt. That's sort of how it feels now a little bit.
I love that.
That's so good, and thank you for sharing. I mean, wow, it's an amazing story. And you talked there about privilege and luck, maybe, but what you did was you saw opportunities. You saw a little jar of a door open, and took very calculated and I think well thought out risks. Right, these are definitely risky things, and sometimes I kind of battle with this in my own head about entrepreneurs being risk takers, but really entrepreneurs understand the risk and they take very calculated risk, and this is
Yeah.
what experimentation is all about. It's why we kind of push on really trying to understand what your customers are thinking, test small things as quickly as possible, fail fast and move on and pivot and change and all those kind of things. And that's all about de-risking. It's about understanding what the risk is, but de-risking it. And also, you seemingly took an incredibly strategic and long term approach to this as well, of slow or small steps in order to get you to where you wanted to get to, and a very, not just like scattergun or not just impulsive. This is about kind of very strategic approach, which I really loved. But you're going to jump in, I think, with that.
Yeah, I was just going to say, like, yeah, I personally, maybe this is from the banking side of me, but I always differentiate between the words like risk and uncertainty. So risk is something you can manage that could have an upside or a downside, but it exists in life and you can control it to an extent. Uncertainty is I don't know what's going to happen and I don't know if I'm in control of what's going to happen. So yeah, if you take a risk and the risk doesn't pan out, if you've put mitigations in place or you have contingencies and backups, it's fine. So, like, take the risk. It doesn't matter. But if it's uncertainty and you're like, I'm taking a jump into something, and I don't know what's going to happen, and if it doesn't pan out, I don't know what I'm going to do. That's different, in my opinion. There's no certainties in life, obviously, but you can, to an extent, like mitigate and control a downside. So that's what I feel I've done. You never. I mean, you can never guarantee, but
I think that's how we've worked well together, though, isn't it? Because often we'll come and we'll just kind of riff and so you'll soundboard ideas off me, and we'll go, okay, well, this thing could play through in this scenario. We've got this assumption, and we just work things through, and then you always go off and do something that I don't expect in a very good way, and it's lovely to hear. But it's a kind of those fundamental principles and going, right, okay, these are the watch outs. These are the way I would go about things. These are the kind of like tools that we have in the innovation world and the startup world to kind of help manage those risks. Off you go to the races. And I think that's why it's really helpful. Like, that's the thing that I see, that's the thing I love about my job, because I have this toolkit that's been built up over many years, and a lot of innovators and startup people have them. There's, the well-being aspects as well. But being able to kind of pull out the right thing at any one time, because someone's going, I'm thinking about doing X, Y, and Z, and being like, well, these are some watch outs. These are things we need to consider. And it just equips somebody to then go. Because at the end of the day, I can never be able to do what Matt can do. I'm not that person. I don't think like him. I don't act like him. And it pisses me off sometimes because I'm not that creative. But I do have a great toolkit. I just go, right, what about this thing? And yeah, I think it's a really lovely way to see people build businesses. It's really awesome.
And let's talk a little bit about that now. I'd love to know, pull open the curtain a little bit into Propulsion Games, where you're at.
Yep.
I've got two kind of major questions or things that I'd love to kind of explore with you. One
Okay.
is from a business sense, how are things going? Again, you don't need to go into details on actual money, but I'd love to kind of get a bit of an understanding about maybe the kind of revenue side of it. How do you make money? Where do your games launch? That kind of distribution, I guess, and revenue. But also the second part of the question, and take these one at a time by all means, but second part is customers. How do you find them? How do you get people to buy stuff? Because ultimately in any business, right, it doesn't matter how creative it is, how wonderful you think something is, if people aren't going to buy it, it's never going to be viable. So I'm really interested to kind of understand what maybe some of your channels or your approaches to finding customers that are going to be able to buy the game.
Yeah, I'm happy to talk to it. I don't know if anything I say should be taken as advice, but I'll certainly speak my experience. So, yeah, like if I peeked under the hood of the journey of Propulsion Games, it kind of looks really, really messy because it is. Partly because, like I said at the start, we emerged as hobbyists with no real desire to build a business, but sort of like we just do what we see others doing, which is like you form a limited company and you try to make bigger games and that sort of thing. So after our first game, we set up a limited company, and then we just decided we'll just make it go dormant right away and decide what our next steps are. And then my brother went and studied his PhD and took a few years to like work out what I wanted our next game to make. And the game just what we wanted the game to be, and the company just kind of stayed dormant for several years. And then in 2020, we started releasing our first titles. In 2022, we made the company, it started actively trading. So we started again, we put a bit of money into it. We transferred the IP to the company. And up until that point, I was kind of just doing the music because that's really what I was doing. And then from 2022, I took more of an active role, and we started really taking a step back and going like, let's put a bit more time and effort into this. We brought on a friend, so that instead of my brother and I, there was 3 of us, and then some sort of informal collaborators around that. And then in terms of the revenue, well, typically the way, well, at least we make money is you pop your game onto Steam, and then people buy the game on Steam, and then you kind of you get your revenue that way through the digital distribution of your games. Yeah, I'm not going to lie. Like we're not selling enough that we're paying ourselves a salary yet or anything like that. It's we from our back catalog, we passively make enough that it's kind of like a bit of a like side income, and like there's no debt in the company or anything. Like it pays for itself in terms of everything we want to do. So for our next project, if we need to pay freelancers or we need to pay the website costs or the MailChimps or like, all those sorts of ancillary things, like it's paying for itself in that way. And we're just kind of working out how can we go from that to our next step, which is like actually paying ourselves so that we've got the time to do more and try and get that momentum up a bit. So yeah, in terms of next steps, I think our goals are to take the game we've made, to use that as a proof of concept for what we could do with a bigger production, and then to try and secure some money to make a bigger version of it. Does that answer your question?
Perfectly. Yeah. I love that. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, again, like you said, this isn't about getting advice, but I think there's so many things that people can take from your story, from your experience, and hopefully kind of translate that into their own world, into their own maybe business and their focus areas. But getting to that kind of point where it's zero cost, I guess. It's not costing you any additional money. You don't have to go into your back pocket or credit card in order to keep on going with this thing. But now it's that big leap, and this is a big leap. The next stage for you is huge, right? And not something to be kind of underestimated. Is it going from that point to this point where it becomes a sustainable business? And of course, there might be a bit of a cash injection in order to kind of get the level of production and whatever else. But I love the fact again that you're viewing these games that you've currently got as maybe I don't know whether this is right, but maybe in a different way to the way that you originally looked at them. Maybe you'll recreate them with a different kind of a production and higher value production, whatever else, higher cost, in order to get to that next stage as well, which I think is really interesting way to view these, not as necessarily as MVPs or prototypes or throw away anything, but actually ways that you can really learn what's working, what you should double down on, what you should do more around in order to get that kind of maybe second release, to take it to the next step. Which I love.
Yeah, we're definitely advocates of. I guess there's two ways I've seen from collaborating with a lot of developers over the years. There's kind of two ways that they go about it. There's the practicing in public route, which is what we've opted for, which is like, let's just do the best we can with the time we've got, get it out the door, and then use all that experience to try and make the next thing better. And then there's the other way, which is kind of like prototyping, getting feedback behind closed doors. If it works, develop it further, try and get money. And some of that stuff, I don't think there's a right or wrong way to do it. But definitely for us, we've just, been practicing in public. Like I said, we've done the best we can with what we've got. That's why I definitely feel like if you were to look at Propulsion Games Under the Hood, you'd say, wow, like this company's like 12 years old and they're still trying to like secure funding. And that's true to an extent. But I think with indie games in general, like they're volatile and it's saturated. So when you look at any success story, there's very rarely does a dev be like, I just made my first game and it exploded. Now I'm a millionaire. Like that doesn't happen. Usually, when you look at it, like you look at the Angry Bird devs or something, they made dozens of games, or you look at any dev and you're like, yeah, behind this seemingly overnight success, because it's the first time you've heard of me, I have years of things I've been doing. So that's kind of, that gives me hope that, you're right. We've kind of refined this year in terms of the niche we want. We've kind of recontextualized our games as like, okay, we can see how we've been getting there, and we've been cherry picking what are the best qualities of what we think we're good at, and that's what we're taking forward to try and get to the next step.
Can I add something? I think your major focus as well has been actually your marketing strategy and the channels of acquisition, because you've done some really lovely stuff. I mean, who were the space people who played the game? It wasn't NASA, was it?
Yeah, no. So no, I think my brother was doing a work placement, and I think it was some folks at the Google DeepMind office, I think is what you're thinking about. And also, my brother had been chatting with the technical director of Minecraft at the time, I believe, and like they had an online, I wouldn't say if it was friendship, acquaintanceship, and they played the game in the Mojang offices, which was awesome to see. One of our games,
And that's the thing, like very smart placement, whether by accident or by design. You know, you've gone out to people as well, both from the Brainy Hawk stuff, but also the video games in previously. So rather than just traditional approaches where it's sort of social media content, etc., these kind of different channels of acquisition to try and get to the general public, to make people aware of it. That's been quite an interesting strategy, and I feel like that's the thing that's evolved in our conversations.
It's 100% evolved. Like my brother and I were the cliche indie developer that's like, well, we've built the game and sent a tweet, and if it's any good, everyone's just going to flock to it. Like, and I think a lot of people make that mistake. You can be forgiven for that. But like one of the things we've done differently, in particular this year, but we've been on a journey a bit with it, is actually a bit more thinking outside the box. So one of the ideas Rebecca had was one of our Brainy Hawk puzzles. I printed off 500 of them, and I sent them round to board game cafes, escape rooms, and because it was a fish and chip shop menu, I sent it around to fish and chip shops around the UK, just to say, could you put this up on your window? You might like this. Then giving a link to our mailing list, and we saw a few sign-ups. Again, not as much as I would have hoped for. Turns out this whole thing is significantly harder than I thought going in, but it's, I mean, a marked improvement on prior years, definitely.
Yeah, and that's the thing. That's the difficulty. So you not only have to get good at designing games. You've got to get good at, position the marketplace. If you don't have money for a marketeer, like it falls to you. And that is, another plate to spin. So yeah, it is hard in these first few years, but you're getting good. I've got faith in you, Matt.
Oh, thank you. We're definitely learning a lot and we're having a lot of fun. So yeah, like I said at the start, I sort of feel to an extent you can't control the outcome of things. You can only control the inputs.
Yeah.
So we're controlling what we can control and just having a good time.
100%. Awesome.
Amazing. Well, look, thank you so much. I think I am so inspired, genuinely. I think your story will resonate with so many people that have been going through similar kind of challenges, maybe a little bit behind you. And equally, there might be people that are a step ahead and have actually made that leap, and maybe they want to get in touch and say, hey, these are the kind of things that I might have done as well. So that's what really the Growth Playground is all about, and that's why we want to elevate and share some of the people that are coming through the Growth Playground, so that we can share that story and that experience, so that everybody can learn. And I think your learning over the last couple of years has been vast. It seems like you've just developed so many different, as Beck says, so many different skills and areas of that have been essential in getting you to where you've got to. Of course, like, what gets you here doesn't get you there, so there's going to be a whole load more learning that happens, and development and kind of constant change that's going to happen over the next few years. But it's super exciting, I think, where you've got to. And by the way, you should pause, and I'm sure you do this, and Bex has no doubt helps you as well, but with this, but pause and go, oh my God, shit, look at where we've come from and where we are now. And I think you should, give everyone a big pat on the back and a hug and say, look, we're doing this. This is amazing. We've got so far. We've got a long way to go in order to get to where we want to get to. But congratulations on everything that you've achieved so far. And I'm really looking forward to what comes next.
Well, yeah, I haven't paused so far, just in case I'm like, shit, I've quit my quite comfortable job. What am I doing? So I'm not sure what comes next. I think our focus is, try and get to that next stage with a more ambitious project. We've got loads of Brainy Hawk ideas in the pipeline, so we're going to develop those. And then, I'm looking at other ways I can, because it's kind of been an epiphany for me this year, like combining the logics, like my past life and my creative life, and just looking at other ways I can kind of explore that thing and seeing it as more of a strength of my personality rather than something I have to kind of hide away. So I'm kind of looking at different opportunities that kind of embraces both those sides of things.
Well, Matt said he's going to make some puzzles for us.
I will, I'll do a startup themed Growth Playground Brainy Hawk, if you like. They're always filled with puns, by the way, because that's kind of my humor, is like dad jokes.
Yes. So love it. Thank you.
Yeah.
We're super excited for that. And hey, look, before we close off, for anyone that's interested in finding out more about you or about Propulsion Games, where can they go? Where can people kind of go to check out the games, or to go and buy something, to go and buy a game, or kind of download something? Where can they go? Yeah,
great, thanks. So propulsiongames.com, you can find out more about our games. We have links to all of them and all our socials there. And then for me, I have a website for my music stuff, which is mattjavanshir.co.uk. But in terms of social media, I'm kind of off of a lot of it personally, except for LinkedIn, really, which I occasionally use. So LinkedIn is really the thing if anyone wants to connect. And I'm always happy if anything I've said has resonated with anyone and they want to reach out, that's always fine.
Yeah.
Amazing.
If you happen to be an overnight success and you can tell Matt exactly the blueprint on how you did it, please share.
Amazing. Well, again, thank you so much. This has been the first of these that we've done. I've absolutely loved it. So we're definitely going to be doing a load more of these things. Just keep involved. Check out thegrowthplayground.com. Of course, got to say that one. Bex will get on at me if I don't say that one. But thanks again, Matt. It's been an absolute joy.
Yeah, thanks for having me on.